Hey everyone, today we're going to take a look at the Japanese natural whetstone called a Komaki. This is not a very common whetstone. Its origins are actually a little hard to track down as well. The reason for this is because its name, Komaki, you would think would come from the Aichi area, because that's where that's located by name. And usually the whetstones you find, especially for Nakatoishi range, which this is, it's an early Nakatoishi, so like a 1 to 3K type stone. Usually they're named after where they come from, but with, how many towns can share the same name, it's not always true, and the information I've been able to find more frequently, and also from some vendors, all points towards it coming out of the Gunma area of Japan, which does produce other whetstones. The most popular one that comes from that area is called a numata. However, there are some other ones that are produced around that region as well. Besides the numata, there were multiple, other mines located around that produced, I don't want to say lesser, they're not necessarily lesser performing, but lesser known whetstones. And this Komaki is one of those. That also seems salient to me with the performance of the whetstone. I don't have a numata anymore, it's been traded away, but this performs similar to the numata and how it behaves, its density, its how the grit feels, how it wants to perform. The numata might just be a tad finer, but when you're talking about, the fineness of an early mid Nakatoishi, you're splitting hairs, does not matter. So I don't have actually a whole lot more on the stone to share than that. We'll have to go a little bit more into personal experiences, but they do pop up very infrequently at certain vendors, and they have this really beautiful, unique look to them, and you can tell that they're Komaki based on that look, right? You might find someone selling a numata or a Gunma stone, Gunma, and if it looks like this or has some of these qualities, then you can probably say, okay, it's a Komaki, because a lot of times things from the same area all just get sold under the moniker that's the most popular in that region. So this stone does benefit from a bit of soaking. I would not call it a extremely thirsty stone or anything like that, but you can see it has some ability to suck up water. Usually when I run into that and we have the stone sealed on the sides and the back, which is always necessary, I think, when you're going to soak them, about a 5-minute soak will aid us in making this a pleasurable experience with this stone. But I did wet it down before we go into soaking, just to show you guys what it looks like, which is very nice. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get this in the water soaking, and then we'll be back. All right, we are done our 5-minute soak here. Looks pretty much as it did before, but as we use it, especially after we form that slurry, because it has a little bit of water in it, it'll definitely make for a more enjoyable experience. So our starting polish here is not necessarily as refined as I normally would have it. Let me go ahead and turn on the autofocus so you have a chance of seeing. This is the finish from the Tenju Nagura video. I didn't put it back onto any other stones because the stone is very coarse, right? It is at the lower end of the Nakatoishi range. It's going to leave a very visible scratch pattern. So given how fine a Tenju Nagura already is leaving, we will still be able to see a drastic difference between what this is and what this stone is going to bring for us. So I did not want to waste hours of my time getting it up to a level to just demolish it again. So usually I do that in each of the videos. I try to get it to about the same finish but a Tenju Nagura is close enough and will allow us to take a look at this stone and me to keep a little bit of my sanity and produce at least these 2 videos a little quicker. So let's go ahead and get this slurry formed. I'm using a 140 that's been fairly exhausted, so it's maybe more like a 400 out of the box. You can hear it already. You can hear how aggressive the stone is on the diamond coat. And man, there's a lot of really interesting things about the stone and how it works and how it looks. Even though the slurry generated really fast there, it's a super dense stone. The density does not translate like how you think of a dense awasedo, a dense finishing stone. Dense finishing stone means that it's really hard on the surface and it does not want to give it up the slurry. But this one, it'll give up the slurry pretty easily, as we just saw. However, it also does not dish quickly either, because it has both like a porousness to it. If you look at the surface previously in the video, you can see it's got a little bit of holes in its structure, but where the holes aren't, it's very dense, and it really has a very good combination of those 2 things. So if you're, looking for that earlier Nakatoishi stage, this is a really interesting option, and I would pick this over a Binsui, both even just because it's more unique, but I would also argue the performance has some benefits over it too. All right, so let's get on the stone. First, when you feel the stone, you kind of get worried a little bit that it's going to be gritty or sandy or something. Like an Omura, if you've ever used one of those, it has a little bit of a feeling like that, and you're afraid it's going to be pure sandstone or something. But it's not. It does have a tiny bit of that feel, but the surface cleans up basically right when you start using it. Any residual feeling of that goes out the window. You get a very nice smooth feel, much more in line with a Numata or a Binsui type feel. And you probably don't need the water there. I just prefer it and felt like I could use a little bit more. Let's do a couple more runs. So as with all early Nakatoishi, this is really setting you up for more work. I mean, this is not where you're going to leave the polish of a knife. Maybe you could stop a little bit of a bad dismount there, didn't I? You could you could sharpen with this. You could leave this at this level and be happy with it if you like a really toothy finish. I personally wouldn't. I mean, I don't know the last time I used a knife below an Aizu level, and I rarely stop there. I was uneven a little bit. Let me do a couple more. I think that poor dismount kind of messed things up a little bit. Yeah, that's looking pretty indicative. I would say it's I said Binsui and has some of that feeling, but it reminds me of like a Binsui and a Alto, blue whetstone added together. So let's turn on the auto here. Is it already on? It's already on. Okay. So let's go ahead and see what we get. So it can actually be a little bit tricky to get an idea of how this is, because it kind of looks like it's a little further then I've been selling it. But I'm hoping I'll be able to grab them. There are some scratches in here that are definitely an early Nakatoishi scratches. I can't tell on the camera, so I'll have to hope that they're showing up. And there's not much of them. They are there, though, and they clean up real easily. So if you're someone who really likes to work on a natural stone for this early stage, I think this is one of the more convincing options that you have. The rarity, I guess, the difficulty of easily finding them is probably going to be the limiting factor. But I don't know, I don't think I'll be keeping this one. It looks really cool and it's really unique, but I up to about the 1 to 2K area, I tend to just do synthetics nowadays. And I don't know if I feel like this has a place where I'm going to pull it out and use it enough. So I think I'll try to find someone who will pull it out and use it more often, and trade them or something like that. So anyway, that is our polish. Let's go ahead and get this rinsed off, and we will pull up some slurry and do a sharpening test. It's funny though, you talk about getting rid of it, and then you use it, and you're like, oh, this is pretty fun to use. So, and it looks really great. It's definitely got some good quality. Alright, so we got it cleaned off, just made a little bit more slurry there. And let's go ahead and get a sharpening test in here so you guys can hear the feedback. Now, it's really interesting. It's real noisy. But I've never had it. It doesn't really give you rogue scratches. I've never had it chip anything. And even though I'm looking to maybe not keep it, I've used it 20 plus times. Before I make these videos, I really try to get a good idea of the item, or if I haven't used it in a while, I pull it back out and use it a bunch. And it sounds like it should be causing some issues, but it's just sound. It's fooling us out. Now, they're hard to find other people who have them, but I have found at least one other person who has one, and they said the same thing, right? They said that it was noisy, and but it never had actually caused any issues. So I just think it's part of the character. All right. Now, in terms of removing material, it does a pretty good job. It does not really, though, generate a whole lot of swarf. You're usually used to seeing that a little bit more. I find it does a decent job removing material off the edge or off the side. But you don't see it generate. Usually that's because pulling a little bit of slurry off the top, this doesn't really glass easily. It just slowly, tiny bit slurries itself, which is a pretty nice quality. So, I can feel it. Yeah, I mean, that's a toothy edge. It's not bad. It's like a little bit more aggressive than an Aizu would leave. Maybe it's above a Bensui. Definitely above an Alto. But the polish is above an Alto. Above a muddy Alto, for sure. And probably above a hard one as well. So if you have those stones and you're looking at one of these, that can give you a comparable. It's nice though. I mean, if you're someone who likes toothy edges for vegetables and whatnot, this would really kick some butt. I think if you're someone who wants a toothy all-arounder, I would prefer to see this kicked up to that Aizu level. But it's pretty close. You could get away with it, right? I think if you didn't sharpen with a lot of them all the time, you wouldn't know the difference, to be honest. Anyway, it definitely gets the job done. It's a nice stone. It's really interesting. And if you have a chance to try one out, I definitely suggest you do so. Their rarity is the biggest problem for sure. And they sound a little scary to use. But I hope if you've ever been interested in these stones or just like being introduced to the more one-off stones, this has been enjoyable. And as always, like, subscribe, all that normal YouTube stuff. And until next time, thanks.